8 exercises that destroy your elbows the most after 40. After 40, the body has much lower tolerance for mistakes, and the elbow is one of the trickiest joints of all. It participates in almost every pushing, pulling, or holding movement, and that's exactly why so many end up injuring it without realizing. The problem is that this damage doesn't appear overnight. It accumulates training after training, silently, until one day the pain arrives, and it arrives all at once, strong enough to keep you away for months. And when that happens, it's not just training that goes away. Comes along the discomfort to work, sleep, or even lift a grocery bag. That's why I usually say that after 40, it's not about training harder, but about training intelligently, avoiding movements that destroy your body from the inside. Before we begin, please tell us through the comments your name and the city where you're watching our content from. We'd love to know. Exercise number 1. Straight barbell curl. The straight barbell curl is one of the most classic exercises in the gym, and almost everyone goes through it in their hypertrophy journey. When performed correctly, it provides excellent stimulus for the biceps brachii and develops that muscular curvature many desire in their arms. The exercise also works the forearm flexors and brachialis, creating complete stimulus in the anterior arm region. However, despite its popularity, this is one of the most harmful exercises for the elbows, especially after 40 years. The fundamental problem lies in the straight bar, which fixes the forearms in a position of total supination throughout the entire movement. This rigid position drastically increases tension in the biceps tendons and unevenly overloads the forearm flexor and extensor muscles. The most common mistakes include moving the elbows away from the torso using loads that are too high, preventing correct execution, and performing the movement too quickly. Additionally, many practitioners tend not to complete elbow extension in the eccentric phase, losing part of the stimulus and developing muscular imbalances. The safest alternative to continue developing your biceps without compromising the elbows is to replace the straight bar with the ease bar, which has a curvature that allows positioning the hands more naturally. If you still feel discomfort even with these alternatives, consider the cable rope curl, which maintains constant tension in the muscle while almost completely eliminating stress on the elbow. For those who already present pain, isometric exercises are an interesting therapeutic option before gradually returning to dynamic versions. Number 2. Skull crusher. The skull crusher, also known as French press, is frequently recommended to develop the posterior arm region, mainly the long head of the triceps. When well executed, it allows great stretching and contraction of this muscle, which theoretically would create ideal stimulus for hypertrophy. The exercise effectively isolates the triceps brachii, allowing exclusive focus on this muscle group. However, this is precisely the type of movement that can become extremely problematic for the elbows after 40 years. During the descent of the weight toward the forehead or behind the head, an enormous lever arm is created that subjects the elbow to disproportionate stress. The triceps tendon, which inserts at the olecranon, is maximally tensioned in this position, especially if the elbow isn't perfectly warmed up or aligned. The fundamental problem is that many try to progress by constantly increasing the weight, without realizing that the elbow has limited adaptation capacity, especially with advancing age. To be performed safely, the exercise would require meticulous execution, with controlled amplitude and moderate loads, which rarely happens in the gym environment. The most common mistakes include moving the elbows away, using momentum to lift the weight, and lowering the weight too much, creating elbow hyperextension. Additionally, many beginners use inadequate loads that completely compromise technique. A much safer way to work the triceps is to opt for the rope triceps pushdown on the pulley. This variation maintains the muscle in constant tension throughout the entire movement without overloading the elbow joint. The movement is more natural and allows the wrists to adjust according to individual anatomy. Another excellent substitute is the overhead rope triceps extension, which provides similar stimulus with much less joint stress. Number 3. Parallel bar dips. Parallel bar dips are considered by many as one of the most complete exercises for the upper body. It simultaneously works the pectorals, triceps, and shoulders, allowing you to lift complete body weight and develop impressive functional strength. The possibility of adding extra load through weight belts makes it even more attractive for those seeking advanced strength and hypertrophy. However, this same multifunctional characteristic is what makes the exercise potentially devastating for the elbows, especially for practitioners over 40 years. The central problem lies in the biomechanics of the movement when performed in full amplitude. When descending too much in the movement, the elbow and shoulder are pushed into a position of hyperextension and extreme tendon stretching. The most common mistakes include descending beyond the point where the arms form a 90-degree angle, allowing the shoulders to roll forward during the movement and using momentum to propel the body upward. Additionally, trying to progress too quickly by adding external weight before completely mastering the technique with body weight is a frequent mistake. The safest alternative is the bench dip, where you sit on a bench with hands supported on the edges, slide your hips forward, and flex the elbows to lower the body. This exercise allows total control of range of motion and load, drastically reducing risk to the elbows. For those who still wish to perform the traditional exercise, it's fundamental to limit the amplitude, never descending beyond the point where the arms form a 90-degree angle. Starting with 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 10 repetitions and progressing slowly, focusing on movement quality instead of quantity, is the safest path after 40 years. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Having constant access to science-based information is what will make you progress with health in the long term in the world of weight training. Number 4. Supinated lat pull-down. The supinated lat pull-down is frequently praised for its ability to develop both the back and biceps simultaneously. When well executed, it works the latissimus dorsi, teres major, rhomboids, and biceps brachii, creating that desired width and thickness in the back, in addition to stimulating the arms. Many practitioners prefer this variation because they feel greater biceps activation during the movement. However, this grip is particularly problematic for the elbows, especially after 40 years. The supinated grip places the biceps and forearm in a position of great torque, creating disproportionate stress in the joint. This problem intensifies in the final phase of the movement, when the elbow approaches the body and mechanical load reaches its peak. This fixed and non-anatomical position creates enormous stress on the flexor tendons and the medial epicondyle of the humerus, potentially generating medial epicondylitis, commonly known as golfer's elbow. With constant repetitions, the tendon suffers microlesions that may not be initially perceived, but accumulate over weeks of training. The most common mistakes include pulling with the arms before engaging the back, using excessive momentum, not adequately stabilizing the shoulders before initiating the movement, and progressing too quickly in load. It's also common to see practitioners who don't respect the full amplitude of the movement, performing partial repetitions that further overload the middle portion of the movement. To avoid this type of injury and continue developing your back and arms efficiently, it's significantly safer to opt for a lat pull-down with neutral grip. This position is much more anatomical and better distributes tension among the muscles and tendons involved. The neutral grip places the elbow in a more favorable position biomechanically, drastically reducing joint stress. For those who already feel discomfort, starting with 3 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions at moderate loads using the neutral grip is the safest path. As strength and resistance increase, the focus should be on improving technique and mind-muscle connection, not just increasing load. Number 5. Heavy hammer curl. The hammer curl is frequently recommended as a safer and more efficient variation to work not only the biceps, but also the brachialis and brachioradialis, muscles that give that impressive thickness to the arms. In theory, the neutral hand position should reduce stress on the joints when compared to the traditional curl. However, when performed with excessive loads, this variation can become surprisingly harmful to the elbows, especially after 40 years. Although it seems more ergonomic than the traditional curl, excess weight in the hammer curl intensely pressures the brachioradialis and forearm extensor muscles, which are primarily responsible for elbow stabilization during this movement. The problem amplifies when we consider that many practitioners tend to use significantly heavier loads in the hammer curl than they could use in the traditional curl, precisely because the neutral position allows greater brachioradialis recruitment. This repetitive overload leads over time to diffuse pain in the lateral forearm region, classic sign of lateral epicondylitis. The most common mistakes include allowing the elbow to move away from the torso during the movement, using the back to propel the weight upward, not respecting the full amplitude of the movement, and using dumbbells that are too heavy, completely compromising technique. Many also tend to rotate the wrist during execution, inadvertently transforming the hammer curl into a supinated curl in the final phase of the movement. To continue strengthening your biceps and forearm muscles safely, the best option is to perform the hammer curl with slower and more controlled cadence, with special focus on the eccentric phase of the movement. Reducing the load to allow 10 to 12 perfectly executed repetitions is fundamental to preserve elbow health in the long term. For those who already present some elbow discomfort, starting with higher sets and moderate loads is essential. Progressing slowly, prioritizing execution quality over absolute weight, is the smartest path to develop impressive arms without compromising joint health after 40 years. Number 6. Triceps pushdown with straight bar. The triceps pushdown with straight bar is a popular choice to develop the posterior part of the arms, especially for those seeking that lateral triceps definition that stands out so much. The exercise allows good isolation of the triceps brachii and offers the advantage of constant tension provided by the cable system, which theoretically would create efficient stimulus for hypertrophy. However, this apparently harmless exercise hides significant risks for the elbows, particularly after 40 years. The central problem lies in using the straight bar, which forces the wrists and elbows to maintain a fixed position, frequently misaligned with individual anatomical structure. This positional rigidity becomes especially problematic when the practitioner fully extends the elbow at the end of the movement. This hyperextension under constant load creates friction and compression in the triceps tendon, exactly at its insertion at the olecranon. With time and repetitions, this leads to recurrent inflammations that can evolve into chronic tendinitis. Biomechanics studies show that shearing force in the elbow joint increases drastically in the final degrees of extension of this movement. The most common mistakes include moving the elbows away from the body during the movement, not adequately controlling the eccentric phase, using excessive loads that compromise technique, and fully extending the elbow at the end of the movement. The safest and most efficient alternative is to replace the straight bar with the rope, which allows natural rotation of the wrists at the end of the movement. This simple change makes all the difference, as it allows each arm to find its most anatomical and comfortable trajectory. The final position with pronated hands better distributes tension in the triceps without overloading the joint. Number 7. Bent over row with supinated grip. The bent over row with supinated grip is frequently recommended to develop back thickness while intensely working the biceps as synergists. When well executed, it engages the latissimus dorsi, rhomboids, lower trapezius, and teres major, in addition to providing great stimulus for the biceps brachii. This combination makes it tempting for those seeking training efficiency. However, this specific variation of the bent-over row can be particularly harmful to the elbows after 40 years. The fundamental problem lies in the position that places the biceps in a situation of vulnerability, since it acts as a synergist under high load, while the forearm remains in complete supination throughout the entire movement. This biomechanical configuration results in high and constant stress on the biceps and forearm tendons, especially at the distal biceps insertion and in the medial epicondyle region of the humerus. With frequent repetitions under significant load, this frequently causes inflammation and pain in the medial elbow region, condition known as medial epicondylitis or golfer's elbow. The most common mistakes include not maintaining the spine in neutral position throughout the entire movement, pulling with the arms before engaging the back muscles, using excessive momentum to lift the weight, and not adequately controlling the eccentric phase of the exercise. Too rapid progression in load is also a frequent mistake that amplifies all the mentioned problems. To continue stimulating your lats and biceps safely, The most indicated alternative is the row with pronated or neutral grip. These positions are much more anatomical and significantly reduce torque on the elbow, better distributing tension among the muscles involved. Another excellent option is the low cable row with neutral grip, which provides constant tension in the target muscles while allowing the elbows to follow a natural trajectory, respecting their individual anatomy. Regardless of choice, starting with 3 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions with moderate loads, prioritizing impeccable technique, is the smartest path after 40 years. Number 8. Military press. The military press is, frequently considered the fundamental exercise to build strong and imposing shoulders. When well executed, it works all 3 deltoid heads in addition to engaging shoulder stabilizers, trapezius, and triceps as assistants. Its multi-joint nature makes it extremely efficient for strength and mass gains. However, this same exercise can become a true elbow destroyer after 40 years, especially when performed with a barbell. The central problem lies in the movement of pushing weight overhead, which demands great simultaneous stability of the elbow and shoulder. When the elbows are too far forward or behind the torso line during execution, significant joint shearing and compression occur. The elbow joint in this movement is forced to stabilize the weight in a non-ideal position, creating stress on the tendon insertions of both the triceps and biceps. With high loads, the tendons and ligaments that stabilize the elbow are subjected to forces that exceed their regeneration capacity, especially after 40 years, when the natural elasticity of these structures is already reduced. The most common mistakes include allowing the elbows to move outward during the movement, not adequately stabilizing the scapular girdle before initiating the elevation, using leg impulse to help with the movement, and progressing too quickly in load. A much safer alternative is the seated dumbbell shoulder press. This variation allows each arm to follow a more natural trajectory and adapt the movement to its individual anatomy. The seated position eliminates the possibility of using leg impulse and stabilizes the spine, creating a much more solid base for the movement. For those who already experience some elbow discomfort, starting with 3 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions with moderate loads is fundamental. The focus should be on establishing perfect movement control before any progression attempt. Remember that, after 40 years, longevity in training should become priority over immediate gains in strength or size. Now that you know the exercises that can most harm your elbows after 40 years, you can train more intelligently and preserve your joints for much longer. The key lies in adapting movements to respect your individual anatomy and natural changes that occur with age, without stopping progress. If you enjoyed this and want to discover popular exercises that silently destroy your knees and spine, we left a video appearing right now on the screen showing each one of them better. Don't miss it. Thank you for watching until here, and may God bless you, my friend.